the latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. The M74 in South Lanarkshire is down to a single lane southbound. Everyone's been funnelled into the inside lane 7 to 8 just south of Larkhall for emergency repairs. South Yorkshire, the A18, the Carhouse Road, is closed at Doncaster just off the racecourse roundabout and the scene of an accident. In Greater Manchester, the A538, the Stamford New Road at Altrincham blocked by a collision. And also in Lancashire, northwest of Ormskirk, the A570 shut on the Southport Road just south of Scaresbrick at the scene of a serious accident. In Surrey, Claremont Lane's been shut between Esher and the A3 all day for accident investigation work. In Devon, the A375 Temple Street blocked southbound through Sidmouth because of a building fire, and still really slow on the M5 heading north through Somerset towards Weston-super-Mare following a collision that's now on the hard shoulder. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For a chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party. Congratulations to the GB News winners at this year's Trick Awards.
And the winner of Interview of the Year is... Alistair Stewart reveals his heartbreaking diagnosis to Camilla Tominey.
And the winner is GB News Breakfast. And the winner is Nigel Farage.
And thank you to you, our GB News viewers and listeners, for making us the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening and welcome to Vote 2024, The People Decide, with me, Camilla Tominey. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to be speaking about the Nottingham killer. Among violent prisoners being allowed to claim benefits, Valdo Callicane. I'm going to be getting the reaction from Emma Webber, mother of Barnaby, who was killed by Valdo Callicane. See what she thinks about that quite ludicrous policy. I'm also going to be discussing the French elections, the rise of Marine Le Pen and what it means for the UK. And breaking news from America, we're going to be discussing the fact that Trump has been granted immunity by the Supreme Court over the allegations concerning the January the 6th riots. I'll also be joined by former Conservative Minister Robert Halfron and former Labour MP Bill Rammell. Do get in touch with me with your thoughts on tonight's topics. Please visit gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Camilla, thank you and good evening to you. Well, Rishi Sunak said today a victory for Labour in this week's election would see Britain's borders become the soft touch of Europe. Campaigning in Oxfordshire today, the Prime Minister insisted flights to Rwanda are an essential deterrent for illegal migrants coming to Britain, and he warned other parties have failed to put forward credible alternatives.
It is a deterrent. It's very simple. I don't think illegal migrants should get to stay in our country. They should be removed to a safe alternative. That is the only way to stop people coming in the first place. That's what you'll get if I'm your Prime Minister. A vote for anyone else just means that we are going to become the soft touch of Europe when it comes to illegal migration. We've had 2 debates head-to-head, and anyone who's watched them would have seen that Keir Starmer just simply can't answer the question, what would he do with illegal migrants that come to our country? He doesn't have a plan. I have a plan.
Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer says he'll have to make a tough choice to deal with a very difficult inheritance if he wins power on Thursday. The Conservatives are warning against handing Labour a supermajority, though, amid polls giving the party a 20-point lead. Labour says a clear mandate is what Britain needs to repair the economy and warns apathy could lead to another 5 years of Conservative government.
And this has to be a summer of change. That's our one job this summer, a summer of change. And so whether you're a family that's been struggling with the cost of living crisis for months and years on end with bills bearing down on you, whether you're a business that's struggled because of the damage that's been done to the economy, or whether you've served your country in uniform or in your community, then this campaign, this positive Labour campaign, is for you, and the fight for change is for you.
Well, so Ed Davey today urged voters to take the plunge and do something they've never done before by voting for the Lib Dems. Have a look.
3, 2, 1, bungee.
Well, there he is. If you're watching on television, you can see he's taking the plunge, taking part in a bungee jump today, urging voters, when they go to the polls on Thursday, to take a leap of faith. He thinks people who are disillusioned by the Conservatives should consider voting Lib Dem. And England's Jude Bellingham is being investigated over a gesture he made during England's win over Slovakia in the Euros last night. The England footballer is facing a probe over a potential breach of what's called the basic rules of decent conduct. It's understood to relate to Bellingham, if I may say, grabbing his crotch after scoring England's equaliser in added time of the match. Harry Kane, of course, going on to score that other goal in extra time, securing England's win. Those are the headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in an hour with more.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks, Polly. Welcome back. Before I get into a conversation about what's gone on the campaign trail today with our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, I'm going to be asking you the following question, which I think is a crucial one because it's been an interesting campaign with lots of twists and turns, let's put it that way. It's been quite dramatic at times, hasn't it, with the emergence or re-emergence of Nigel Farage and indeed Ed Davey plunging off cranes and going down slip and slides and everything that's been going on with Rishi Sunak in what's been quite a perilous campaign for the Tories. So my question to you this evening is, have you changed your mind during this election about who you might vote for? Has anything made you change your mind? And if it has, what was it? Let us know. Get in touch, leave a message for me at gbnews.com/yoursay with your views this evening, and we'll revisit that just a little later. But as I say, joining me now is Olivia Utley. Olivia, how much longer of this have we got to come? Is it 3 days? I've lost count.
It's 3 days, although I keep thinking then it's all going to be over. Of course, then we'll have a new government.
Roll on election night.
Leadership contest.
We could have a Conservative leader. Anything could happen, let's be honest.
Anything could happen.
We'll both be very busy on election night, which is a great thing. But in the run-up to that, what's been going on today? We just saw that clip of Rishi Sunak. We're both watching it. I mean, it is a desperate plea now from the Prime Minister. What's he going to come out with that? If you vote Labour, you're going to die in your sleep? Like, what left has he got to say as this sort of threat to his own electorate? You know, you've got to stick with us, he's saying.
Oh, it is beginning to feel quite desperate. And I really noticed the total difference in tone between the two leaders today. You've got Keir Starmer campaigning in rural Buckinghamshire and Oxfordshire,
Yes.
Chipping Norton, David Cameron's old seat.
Oh, my goodness.
These former real Tory heartlands. And the only thing that Keir Starmer Starmer is mildly worried about, worried is probably even too strong a word for it, is complacency on polling day. He thinks that it is possible that with all this talk of a supermajority, which the Conservatives are bigging up, you end up in a situation where Labour voters in Labour-safe seats just don't bother to go out and vote Labour. So his only message in these last few days, it's not about policy, it's not about what he's going to do as Prime Minister, it's just about, if you are minded to vote Labour, which by the looks of the polls most people are, then please do go out on polling day. It is worth your time going to do that. On the other hand, Rishi Sunak is desperately trying to milk the very last scraps that he can out of this campaign. Today he was talking about immigration. He says that the Conservative plan for immigration is more comprehensive than Labour's, and if a Labour government came in, then you would see more small boats crossing the Channel. That would be a more compelling argument if we hadn't had 4,000 small boat arrivals across the Channel since Rishi Sunak called the general election just 6 weeks ago. So Rishi Sunak is desperately trying to come up with new ideas, new reasons for people to vote Conservative. I think it's interesting too that he is talking about the supermajority a lot, and now people who are minded to vote Conservative aren't doing so because they think that there's a chance that the Conservatives might win the general election. They're doing so, or might do so, because they don't want to have a sort of Labour government with so much power that it's able to push anything through. And the Conservatives are leaning into that. They're not even talking really about winning this election.
No, they've given up on that.
No,
well, it's weird
all about
because,
not losing by too much.
To be fair, the Prime Minister's sort of vacillated between trying to kind of push back that suggestion that there's a Labour supermajority that's an inevitability, which was initially floated by Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary, and then it looked a bit too defeatist. And yet, on the other hand, he's tweeting after the football on Sunday night, you know, it's not over till it's over, and trying to recreate the magic of Jude Bellingham's very last-minute goal. And I was sort of thinking, well, is that positive thinking or just deluded? I suppose he's in an impossible situation, isn't he?
Impossible situation. What I've heard from Conservative activists who've been campaigning is that the only line that really works on the doorstep is this line about a Labour supermajority. It's about mitigating Conservative losses. And it sounds as though CCHQ is quite keen to talk more about that. But obviously it doesn't look great for a Prime Minister just before an election, not even to be talking about winning, only to be talking about mitigating those losses. So Sunak's sort of going down the mitigating loss route, but also trying to, he sort of has to, he's sort of almost it's contractually obliged to pretend that there is still a chance that the Conservatives might win.
Tell me about this row that seems to have carried on today about who might be working later into the night. Something's been said about finishing work at 6 p.m. Is that what Keir Starmer suggested he'd do?
Yes, Keir Starmer has said that he would, unless there are exceptional circumstances, he'd almost never like to work past 6 p.m. because he'd like to spend time with his family.
I was checking my watch now at 7:09. Nice work if you could get it. Is he being completely ridiculous? I mean, as Prime Minister, he's going to have to work day and night, isn't he? I mean, let's remember Margaret Thatcher running the country in, what was it, 3 or 4 hours sleep? Winston Churchill dictating notes from the bathtub. I mean...
Well, exactly. I mean, it's a very divisive comment because there are lots of people who say, well, the sort of Prime Minister who spends his evenings with his family, switches off, manages to get some quality sleep, etc., might be making better decisions on behalf of the country. I think also it plays in quite a lot to the kind of Gen Z attitude of, you know, keep your own space, keep your work and personal life separate. Balance. Wouldn't surprise me if Gen Z were quite impressed by this.
Oh, I'm sure they will be. Then, unfortunately, what happens to Gen Z is they have to get a mortgage and they have kids and they realise how expensive they are, and suddenly all of that rhetoric around, oh, I'd quite like to work flexi time, changes into how can I get a second job. But anyway, Olivia, maybe I'm just talking from personal experience there.
Well, Sunak is really pushing this line. He's got CCHQ has mocked up a day in Keir Starmer's diary where he's sort of getting up at 10 o'clock, having a long lunch, speaking to the unions in the afternoon, and then clocking off at 6 o'clock. And I've seen lots of Conservative candidates tweeting about this. So the Conservatives clearly think that this is a line which will play very badly with the country. But
also,
again,
it's hard to know whether to believe Starmer. It's a bit like the whole I wouldn't get private healthcare even if a loved one was in great need. I mean, practically, really, you're not going to be working beyond 6 p.m. Let's see how that works. Olivia Utley, we're going to be working beyond 6 p.m. most of this week. In fact, I'll be working through the night because I'm going to be hosting the election with Stephen Dixon on Thursday. Do tune in. We're going to be going to air as soon as the exit poll drops, so that's 9:55 onwards on Thursday. Coming up next, we're going to be discussing this extraordinary case of Valdo Calacane and this idea that this killer of 3 people can receive benefits in his secure hospital. Would you believe that? It's actually quite a shocking story. We're going to be coming to that next. Don't go anywhere.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
So there was a calf that was run down by a Surrey police car. It's now being nursed back to health, according to the family who own the farm that the calf escaped from.
Well, he didn't just run him over once, he ran him over twice.
No, we're not showing you the footage. The footage is really shocking. But the police officer who was driving this vehicle has now been taken off frontline duties until a full investigation is completed. And I feel like I'm yet again the only person in the country who thinks the police officer was just doing his job. That police officer, probably a young guy who's got dual carriageways left, right and centre in that area. Do you know what the most popular business is in that area in Feltham?
Farming.
McDonald's drive-through. It's got a queue round the block anytime you go round that area. And all those people queuing for McDonald's who are now outraged that this poor cow had to die.
Because it's going to be at McDonald's at some point.
At some point it was going to die. I'm really sorry. If you eat meat, you can't be upset by a cow dying. I think the fast roads with cars at 10 o'clock at night in the dark, they're not expecting a cow to walk out in the middle of the night. There would have been a massive pile-up. Then there'd been, like, who knows how many people dead. And then the police would have been criticised for not neutralising the threat.
The thing is, it was because he did... why... You could see the first time, the calf could barely stand up. I just don't get why I had to then go and do it a second time.
Well, I suppose at that point it's a bit like if you run over like a deer on the side of the road, you know, and if the police they're going to kill the animal to put it out of its misery. That's all I can presume. And the guy's not trained. This is Feltham. It isn't Texas. He's not going to come out with a lasso. He doesn't know what to do.
Where did this happen, Feltham?
Feltham. I'm sure the inbox is now going to be full of people saying, "Bev, you're outrageous. You lack compassion."
No, there will be people who agree with you. But if it had been done once, that was enough. But I don't think it needed to do it the second time.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
This election night, we're putting on a party.
And you are invited.
We'll be here with you.
Following all the twists and turns.
As well as all the live reaction from our election night watch party.
With our GB News lineup.
And as morning breaks, we'll be here with breakfast from 6 a.m.
As it becomes clear who the winners and the losers really are.
Vote 2024.
Thursday, the 4th of July.
Only on GB News.
Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Vote 2024 with me, Camilla Tominey. Let's look at this extraordinary story about the Nottingham killer, Valdo Callicane, who is among violent prisoners allowed to claim benefits, according to a story by The Telegraph. They put in a Freedom of Information request, and the hospital that is holding Valdo Callicane, which also held Ian Brady, the Moors murderer, said it was, quote, standard practice for criminals like Callicane to get benefits because they had not been handed prison sentences and instead were treated as patients because of their mental disorder. Just to explain that in financial terms, so unlike prisons where benefit claiming is not allowed, actually Callicane and others could be claiming £390 a month in universal credit payments because it covers their basic bed and board, is already covered by the state, but they're able to claim this before their release because they're entitled to these benefits because they're in this mental institution as opposed to a prison. So if you counted that up over the course of 20 years, that could amount to £93,000 in current universal credit rate which means £93,000 of taxpayers' money could be spent on this killer. Let's just remind ourselves of who lost their lives in this. He murdered 19-year-old students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar, and school caretaker Ian Coates, who was 65. Don't also forget that his case was downgraded by the Crown Prosecution Service. So the families of the victims wanted him to be tried for murder, but he wasn't tried for murder. He was tried for manslaughter due to his diminished responsibility. And that is why he is in that secure hospital rather than in a prison. Let's bring Emma Webber, who's mother of Barnaby Webber, into the conversation now. Lovely to see you, Mrs. Webber. Look, before we get into this case, how are you doing? How's your husband, Dave? How's your son, Charlie? I know you've done a lot of media, but at the end of the day, you're a grieving mum. So let's just establish how you're getting on, first of all.
Hi, Camilla. Well, first of all, call me Emma, please. How am I doing? I honestly, hanging on by my fingernails. I always say that, but it's true. We're in a situation we should never be in. It's because all of it's just heinous. It's just horrific. And I'm speaking to you from a hotel room in London because I've been up here today from Somerset, meeting with the CQC for the outcome of their investigation into Callaghan's handling and management from the Mental Health Trust, and also with the IOPC with regards to the failings of the police forces. So that probably says it all. You know, we're trying our best. We shouldn't be here, but we are. But because we're being listened to, I feel grateful, you know, for people like you inviting us on, because we have to be heard, because this is so wrong. It's so wrong, right?
It's so wrong. Tell me what your reaction is to this story based on a Freedom of Information request. I mean, the idea that Callaghan could be receiving taxpayers' money in benefits strikes me as perverse. I think the GB News audience will be absolutely horrified by it. So goodness only knows how you, as Barnaby's mother, feels. What's your reaction to this story?
I think the word perverse is perfect. It sickens me. It sickens every family member that's had their lives shattered by Callaghan, and he's a murderer. You know, we've been very public with our criticism of the way he was treated prior to the arrest, prior to the attacks, and also subsequently. And I think the fact that this individual is treated as a patient, he's not treated as a murderer. There's no punishment, there's no penal element to anything. And on top of that, he's costing us as taxpayers best part of £300,000-400,000 a year to keep him in his secure unit. And then on top of that, he's getting thousands of pounds a year in benefits that he's entitled to, whereas we as families aren't entitled to anything. We are not entitled to more than 12 paid for therapy sessions by the victim support service that's funded by the Ministry of Justice. I think it says it all. It's something is really wrong here, and it needs addressing.
Will you be lobbying the next government, whoever that may be, to change this? Because obviously there are rules in place for prison, but I do agree with you entirely. This should be based on the nature of the crime, regardless of the mitigating factors that are named in court by the perpetrator's legal team. This man has claimed the life of your son and 2 other people. Therefore, why on earth is it even a consideration that he should receive any further taxpayers' money?
I think it's not just Callaghan. I think that there are dozens, if not hundreds, of other perpetrators of very serious, heinous crimes, and I use the word crimes on purpose, that are in receipt of these benefits. And you know, this isn't news to us. We've known this for months and months, and we've questioned and questioned, and we've had evasive answers from the government. And thankfully, you know, a diligent investigative journalist has highlighted it, and it's caught the news today. Wouldn't even really know how to begin with all the failings that there have been, but you know, this is just one of them, and we have to highlight that. I think we're heartened by the fact that it's been raised, and that there's public concern about it, there's governmental concern about it. And we've been assured by the current government, we've been assured by the prospective new government, if Labour get in, that it's an immediate, urgent concern that they will address. And we're not going to stop because, we do not believe that Baldo Calacane is an unwell person. We've never disputed the fact that he's mentally unwell. However, even in the notes of the arrests and presented at court, he knew what he was doing. He knew it was wrong, but he did it anyway. And he planned this heinous murder. Trust me, half of the facts haven't even come out yet. And when they do, and I hope it'll be by way of a public inquiry, I really hope maybe we are that case that changes the law so that other families don't have to go through this devastation. And, it's just the bitterness and the poison that's added when you learn it's all in his favour. He's treated as a patient. There's a lot of concern about his medication, his treatment, his activity programme, about reducing him from high security to medium security and letting him out in the community. That worked well, didn't it? Because this is somebody that's been diagnosed for 4 years. Well, now 3 years last year. And look at what he did. So,
I mean, anyone watching this, Emma, anyone watching this has been so touched by this case. They've been so touched by the stories that you've told about Barnaby and Grace and indeed Ian Coates' family. Also, Charlie, I mean, I read the piece that he did with the Mail, I think it was last week. What a brave son you have in him keeping Barnaby's memory alive. What can we do to help here? Because we could have a Prime Minister in place on Friday who used to be the Director of Public Prosecutions, as he likes to remind everybody, Keir Starmer. Do you want to make a direct appeal to him on this show? What do you want to say to him? Because it sounds to me as if you think this whole criminal process has been weighted in favour of Calacane, against your family, against Grace's and Ian's family. So speak directly to the Prime Minister and, we'll make sure his team get the next Prime Minister, potentially, and we'll make sure his team gets this message. What do you want to say?
I think, firstly, Charlie's my absolute hero. And the fact that he's able to speak like that makes me so proud of him. And trust me, we don't let him do that kind of thing lightly. But he said to me, Mum, after he spoke to the Daily Mail, he said, Mum, that actually helped. It made me feel better because his voice is being heard. He's 16, nearly 17, so he's got a voice and it needs to be listened to, not just us in our middle age and via our lawyers. We've had the opportunity to speak to Keir. We've had the opportunity to meet with him and the potential shadow cabinet. We've also met with the current incumbent and government. And I do think they're listening. I think they're listening because there's so much public support and media support for us. And I don't think for a second, with respect to both parties, that we'd get so much attention if it weren't for the public and media support of us. And so we're not going to stop. And so Keir said 3 times now in the last 7 or 8 days that he is behind a public inquiry. And I think the last thing we want is years of this being extended and years more pain. But if it means we get the answers and if it means we can question and challenge some of the, quite frankly, ridiculous decisions that have been made at very senior levels in the CPS and the police force and the NHS, then if that's what it takes, then that's what we're going to have to do, because I think that's the only way we're going to get answers. Because I can't give details, but we've had an indication today that, the various agencies do close ranks and they're silos and they deal with their terms of reference and their little bits. But, no one's looking at the holistic picture here. Nobody's saying, hang on, because it'll happen again. It's not a case of an isolated incident, unfortunately. I believe there are many Calacanes out there in the community, from what we've heard, about the lack of care and the lack of due diligence and candour. So, message to Keir and to Rishi, likely either one of them are going to be our next Prime Minister, that we're not going to stop beating at your door because we're doing it not just in the interest of our case. I think we're doing it in the interest of public safety, because nobody wants to go through this.
No, absolutely not. Look, we're behind you. The public's behind you, Emma. Thank you once again for your bravery and your candour. And we will keep in touch because we want to keep on following this case in Barnaby, Grace and Ian's memory. So thank you so much indeed for your time this evening. Thank you. Crikey. Right, let's bring the panel into the conversation now. I'm joined by, actually, 2 former MPs for Harlow, Bill Rammell and Robert Halfron, and also, as you've reminded me, 2 former Ministers for Higher Education. Before we get into the campaign, as parents, I think we can all identify with Emma Webber and the families involved in this. It does seem to me that something's gone wrong with this case, that they are feeling that they haven't been listened to, that they've been failed by multiple agencies, and that Valdo Calacane seems to be getting more of the state and authorities' attention than the families of these victims. We need a public inquiry into this, don't we?
We do. What really struck me were her words about the way that public agencies close ranks when there's been potential wrongdoing. And I think the only way to cleanse that and get at it is a public inquiry. But I found it shocking that he's getting access to benefits. Even if you accept that he was in the midst of a severe psychotic episode, it was still a heinous crime. He is being detained to protect the public at public expense. Why on earth is there a need to pay him benefits? And I'm very pleased Labour's committed to review that.
It's pretty grim. The courage of the family is extraordinary. You can't help but be moved just watching your interview. What I don't understand is that they're getting this criminal is getting universal benefits and yet is being looked after by the state. There's absolutely no justification for it whatsoever. And how this has happened and how this anomaly has been allowed to go on, it's got to be stopped. And I'm glad that both government, the Conservatives and the Labour Party, it looks like, from what Ms Webber was saying, are going to, looks like they're going to close the loophole, but it's got to be pronto.
Also, by the way,
continue.
We wouldn't have found out about this if it wasn't for a Freedom of Information request by my Telegraph colleague, Charles Hymas.
Pretty incredible work by the Daily Telegraph.
And it's not just one case, there's about 80 of them, apparently.
Well, exactly, He's one of 80 convicted killers, rapists and other violent criminals who are detained at Ashworth, which is that secure hospital, as you say, Bill, that are entitled to thousands of pounds in universal credit and employment and support allowance. Absolutely unbelievable. Right, let's get on to the election campaign. Let's just discuss this "I'm not going to work beyond 6 p.m. claim by Keir Starmer.
Well, God help if it's 5 minutes to midnight, because Keir Starmer will say, I've got my pyjamas on, I can't answer the phone.
Bill, this is a remarkably naive thing for him to say, isn't it?
Hold on, put it in context. He talked about Friday evenings, 1 day a week, and of course, if there was an emergency, he would work beyond 6 o'clock. But you know what? I think when he said, working 24/7 isn't the best way to get results, I think that will chime with a lot of people. And, there ought to be some time, at least once a week, protected for him and his children. But he's going to be working 70, 80, 90 hours a week, of course.
Well, the impression was it wasn't just a Friday night. The impression was that he was going to stop after 6 p.m.
It was explicitly just Friday week.
No, he talked about Friday night separately because he says, on Friday night I always spend with my family. No one's got any problem with that. But the reality is, Prime Minister, it's a 24-hour job. It is a 24/7 job. You've got crises coming to you every minute. We're living in a world with Russia and Ukraine war. We've got problems in the Middle East. This isn't somebody who can just say, I'm sorry, I'm having a cup of tea at 6 o'clock. It's just crazy.
But Robert, that's not what he's saying. I mean, look, this is a guy who throughout his working life has worked extraordinary hours, and he will carry on doing that as Prime Minister.
Has this campaign all been a bit unedifying? I mean, we had today the Labour battle bus. It's got these pillowcases with Rishi Sunak's face on them. You don't want to be waking up next to this come July the 5th. We've had one candidate referring to reform and equating them with Nazis. It's all getting a bit silly, isn't it?
I don't think this campaign is any different to any other campaign that I've been involved in. I think
don't the public just get switched off by these tactics?
I think the public often say you're all the same and they don't like it. I completely get that, but it does go on. It's inevitable. But I do think there are clear messages, and there is a clear choice in this campaign. If you want lower taxes, if you want to get the Rwanda thing through to stop the boats, then people can vote Conservative. And otherwise, if you want higher taxes, a tax on your pensions, fuel duty going up, something I've campaigned for all my previous parliamentary career, then vote Labour.
I mean, Bill, this is the trouble with Labour, right? When we have shadow ministers in here, Pat McFadden was in on Sunday, the guy who's coordinating the campaign. They cannot rule out tax rises on people or things or wealth other than working people. This is the problem. He's like, we've got no plans to. And I say, you're not going to rule it out, though. So there is a degree of jeopardy, even though they're doing this whole Ming Vase strategy.
Let me come on to that. Let me just push back at Robert. Net migration 3 times higher today than it was under the last Labour government, and the highest tax burden since the Second World War under this government. That's
net
what people are
migration
to.
was coming down over the past year.
It's going up, Robert.
We know why the tax burden has gone up, because we spent £450 billion on COVID, which the Labour Party supported at the time. But now, since then, we've been reducing tax by cutting the national
All right, let Bill
insurance.
come back in on the tax point.
The thresholds are still frozen until 2028.
You're not going to reverse them.
Are you going to reverse them?
No, because we're inheriting the worst fiscal inheritance of any government that we've seen. But in terms of the tax claim, we've made it abundantly clear: no increases to national insurance, VAT and income tax.
Yeah, we know what you're not going to tax.
Beyond
but
that,
what are you going to tax?
Beyond that, it would be irresponsible to make commitments that you can't necessarily guarantee. We've seen that with the Tories. Look at what they said at the last general election and then completely repudiated
Labour
it.
can't guarantee that taxes won't rise on things other than working people, whatever that might be.
All our programme has been properly funded, and we don't need to raise taxes to deliver it.
Nobody can answer this question.
Why don't we just say, the economic growth record of the last Labour government was hugely better than this government. That's how you generate investment.
We cut fuel duty by 5p. Labour are going to raise fuel duty. They've always raised fuel duty when they've been in government. They're going to tax our pensions. They've always taxed pensions.
The fuel escalator was introduced by the last but one Conservative government.
The Labour Party voted against every fuel duty cut. We froze fuel duty for all our time in office and cut it by 5p when Rishi was the Chancellor. The Labour Party are going to raise fuel duty. That's why they won't give a commitment.
Robert, you've got a long memory.
Tax
I think
our
it was Ken Clarke who started the fuel escalator.
Who was it? That was a government a long time ago. Who was it who cut fuel duty by 5p? Which government was it that froze fuel duty every single year since 2010? Which party voted against all those fuel duty cuts? It was the Labour Party.
And which party has delivered the highest tax burden since the Second World War amidst a cost of living crisis and with living standards, real wages having gone up by just 3% under this government,
and which party,
compared to 27% under the last Labour government?
Which government faced the biggest crisis since the Second World War because it had to spend £450 billion on the pandemic?
We all had that crisis. We had the World Banking crisis.
They did have to put up taxes during that time. The Prime Minister has absolutely acknowledged that. But since he's got the economy back under the right path, and we're cutting national insurance. We've already cut it by £900. We've increased the national living wage. We're going to cut pension tax. You're going to raise it.
Do you know what? If you think the economy is under control, that does not accord with people's lived
highest
experience.
Growth rate in Europe, 2% inflation.
Talk to people on the doorstep.
Tempted as I am to just nip out of the studio, have a cup of tea and a Kit Kat and leave you to it. We have to leave it there. But we love a bit of red on blue, so thank you very much indeed. Good luck to both respective sides on Thursday. That's how equanimical we are here at GB News. Right, coming up next, we're going to be discussing what Marine Le Pen has done to Emmanuel Macron, which is basically une humiliation. We're going to be getting onto that in just a moment. Back in 2, don't go anywhere.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. Looking ahead to tomorrow, and there will be some showery rain around, but also some bright sunny spells. But first thing, for some, it is going to be a bit cloudy and a bit damp because of a frontal system that has already pushed its way in from the northwest and is currently making its way southeastwards as we go overnight. So eastern, southern parts of England likely to have quite a bit of cloud and some drizzly rain as we go through the night and head towards dawn tomorrow. Elsewhere, some clear spells mixed in, a few showers possible, but temperatures really aren't going to drop a huge amount, particularly in the east and southeast where we have that thicker cloud. It is going to be a pretty mild start to the day tomorrow. But like I said, a cloudy, damp, drizzly start here. Further north, a bit of a brighter start, particularly across eastern parts of Scotland. A good deal of sunshine early on here. Further west, we will see some showery rain pushing its way in, and that's going to turn a bit more persistent, a bit more widespread as we go through the day. Across Northern Ireland, much of northern England, through the morning, it's looking mostly dry, some bright sunny spells. Watch out for a few showers across parts of Wales, perhaps northwest England, and then a real west-east split across much of central southern England with that cloud and that drizzly rain I mentioned across eastern parts. Most of that, though, will clear away as we go through the day, and so it is going to turn a little bit drier and brighter here. Further north, a slightly different story. Yes, there will be some sunny breaks around, but I am expecting some showery rain to push its way in across parts of Scotland, northern England and Northern Ireland, and some of this could be on the heavy side. Temperatures around average for the time of year, just just about scraping into the low 20s towards the south. Wednesday looks like a pretty wet day for many of us. The rain may not be especially heavy, but it's going to be fairly widespread. Most places likely to see some wet weather at times, could even be some low clouds, some hill fog and some strong blustery winds to watch out for as well. For many, Thursday looks like it will be a brighter day, but could be quite windy for some of us before more rain on Friday. Bye-bye.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Vote 2024 with me, Camilla Tominey. Let's talk about Marine Le Pen's resurgence in France. And indeed, it looks as if her National Rally Party are going to trounce Emmanuel Macron's ruling centrist alliance. Exit polls suggest that they are winning 34% of the vote, while the left-wing New Popular Front is on second with around 29%. And Mr Macron's Together alliance is on 20.5% to 23%. They think be another poll after our election next week. Let's discuss this now with Nabila Ramdani, who's a French-Algerian journalist and author of Fixing France, How to Repair a Broken Republic. Lovely to see you this evening. Thank you very much for joining me, Nabila. What's been going on then? I mean, it does look as if Le Pen is going to surge to victory. What does that therefore mean for Emmanuel Macron, his party and indeed his presidency?
Well, I think, undoubtedly the exit polls that we saw yesterday indicate a highly significant vote share for the National Rally. There's no doubt about it. But it's not definitive. I mean, what ultimately counts is the seat share, and we'll know more about that next Sunday. So what we need to work out at the moment is how this massive vote share will translate into seats actually won in the 577 seats at the National Assembly next Sunday. The turnout was incredibly high, almost 70%, and I imagine it will be even higher next Sunday, showing how incredibly serious these elections, these key parliamentary elections are being taken by people in France. The percentage of the votes for the National Rally that they got yesterday represents 12 million votes, with 12 million people, which is an incredibly high number, bearing in mind that they usually get around 4 million votes at parliamentary elections. So it's literally tripling of their vote in a short period of time. And I think there was a lot of shock and indeed anger at this result. We saw a lot of people already taking to the streets in Paris after the exit polls, but I don't think it was much of a surprise, given that the National Rally has evidently been polling extremely well for a long time, not least all at the European parliamentary elections only 3 weeks ago.
And do you think that's a result of Marine Le Pen having sanitised the party a bit more, changed the name from the National Front that her father, Jean-Marie, set up in the 70s, now calling it the National Rally, obviously got Bardella front and centre of the movement as a future Prime Minister, a young guy that can relate to the Gen Zs. Has that all helped?
Well, I think, Marine Le Pen claims that she has changed the face of the party, one that is indisputably linked with the racism of the worst kind, including Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. I mean, the party has firm roots in Nazism. Founding members fought with the Waffen-SS, and there's also a lot of nostalgia that is linked to the resentment over the loss of the France's colonial empire, and not least of all in Algeria. And I think that all this legacy hasn't gone away, and there's no evidence of that legacy that has magically vanished. I think quite the opposite. We've seen, for example, during the campaign, some of the proposals of the National Rally effectively putting forward what they call a national preference for French people with French roots, going as far as proposing, for example, to abandon that Republican right of any French person born on French soil to automatically become French. They've also been suggesting that they can clamp down on certain jobs for dual nationals, and indeed banning the Islamic headscarf in all public spaces, including on the streets. And I think there's a lot of fear that if they do manage to get in a position of government, meaning that potentially Jordan Bardella, a 28-year-old with no experience of government, could end up being the Prime Minister of France, I think it's looking pretty daunting for certain sections of the French population, and therefore there is this massive call for what is called the Republican Front to try to effectively lock out the far right from power. And this comes from not only Macron's coalition, Renaissance Party, but also this new leftist coalition, the New Popular Front, calling for to be a bit savvy and to do deals at the next round of elections to try to keep the far right out, but also calling for demonstrations on the street to try and convince the moderates not to join in the surge of the far right.
Yes, Ms Ramdani, thank you very much indeed for joining me this evening. I think whatever happens in this election, it's not looking good for Emmanuel Macron. That much we can conclude. Well, let's go from France now to America. The Supreme Court has ruled that Donald Trump could be immune from criminal charges over the January the 6th riots because he was once a president. And that comes following the fallout, let's put it that way, from this disaster class in debating that we witnessed on Thursday night. So Biden went against Trump. You'll no doubt have seen some of the clips where we saw 81-year-old Joe Biden, the US president, stumbling over his words, unable to finish some of his sentences, and generally struggling on that debate stage. We've now got a poll by CBS News and YouGov, which indicates that 72% of registered voters believe the president does not have the mental or cognitive health to serve as president. That's a sharp increase from 65% who thought the same in an earlier poll. Worryingly for the Democrats, 45% of registered Democrats who responded to that poll say they believe the president should step aside for another candidate. But after a meeting at Camp David with the Biden family, including, of course, his wife Jill and his children, apparently they want him to stay in the race and keep fighting, which I think is something that has sparked debate not just in America, but around the country. Let's get into this now with Hogan Gidley. He's a White House Deputy Press Secretary of yesteryear. He served from 2019 to 2020 in the Donald Trump administration. Lovely to see you this evening, Hogan. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I mean, I'll ask you a simple question. I appreciate you perhaps got some skin in the game, but is Biden fit to be president right now?
Nope. But that's nothing new. I'm so glad that the media found Jesus on this. But the fact is, they've been covering up for Joe Biden's foibles for a long time. Remember, it was just a week ago before the debate. They invented a word to try and protect him. It wasn't a deep fake. They were cheap fakes. They were basically edited videos that showed Joe Biden had cognitive and physical mental decline, but they weren't real videos. They were just manipulated in a way that made the public think he was in serious decline. The problem is that debate erased all of that nonsense. They saw him behind a podium. As you said, he stumbled, he bumbled, he mumbled, he could not complete sentences. He clearly had lost his train of thought throughout the debate. He would stare off into the distance. And remember, the entire thing was set up for him. This was his network, his anchors, his rules that he made up. They prepped him. They had one-liners for him, ways to mess with Donald Trump, and he still failed this badly.
Having said that, in the same poll, 49% of voters said former President Donald Trump does not have the mental or cognitive health to serve as president. We've got a 78-year-old here going against an 81-year-old. I mean, I've said this in the past on this channel. You know, we've got the American people facing a choice between a man who seems to be facing a prison sentence and another man who can't finish a sentence. It's a bit of a Sophie's choice, isn't it, Hogan?
Well, not really, because the debate showed two men in two different stages of life. One of them clearly at the end, and one of them poised to be the next president of the United States, articulating the specifics about his policy that improved the lives of all Americans, regardless of race, religion, color, or creed, but also settled the world landscape as well. We didn't have wars breaking out all over the place like we do under Joe Biden. So these two men, and you talked about the choices, and some while some may lament that on both sides of the aisle, that's the menu. It's beef or chicken. You don't get a third option here. And right now, Donald Trump is the clear frontrunner because not only is he ready to be president, not only did he have proven success while he was president, but the American people want to return to those policies that made their today better with the potential for their tomorrows to be better as well.
A beef or chicken? What if you're vegetarian, Hogan? What's your choice then? I mean, would it be better for Trump?
RFK Jr., maybe?
Maybe, yeah, exactly. It would be better for Trump, though, if Biden remains in place, wouldn't it? I mean, he's got more of a chance winning now after that debate than, say, if Biden is replaced by California Governor Gavin Newsom.
Well, I wouldn't say that because a lot of people don't know Gavin Newsom at this point. But when they start to learn things about how horrible California is at this point, the rapid decline they've faced with bad policies that have resulted in spikes in crime, homeless problems, drugs, people dying from fentanyl overdoses, not to mention the border problems they have in California as well. I think the choice is still pretty clear. Regardless of who the Democrats put up, they're going to have a problem with their policies because they're just not popular with the American people.
Hogan Gidley, thank you very much indeed for joining me this evening.
Thank you much.
Well, thank you. Well, you know, if you thought US politics was a bit bonkers, should we just reflect on what used to be known on this show as What the Farage, which I'm now calling Can You Believe It? It's that moment in the day where you think to yourself, this is literally what we've become. And this is the Liberal Democrat leader, Ed Davey, deciding that the best way to campaign for the party today was to take a bungee jump in Eastbourne. Should we take a look at the footage? Let's just see him now propelling himself through the air. The last time I watched this footage, I actually felt slightly vertiginous because it's quite high. Let's have a look at him jumping off this crane in Eastbourne. Just like to remind people that Ed Davey is 58 years old, but he says that people should take a leap of faith on Ed Davey and the Liberal Democrats. There you have it. Would you believe I once bungee jumped? Perhaps that's a story for another show. Coming up next, we're going to be discussing the Euros. Gareth Southgate. Does he need to dispense with the knitwear? Channel his inner Alex Ferguson and go mad at this team? Can they produce something better than we saw on Sunday against Switzerland this Saturday? We're going to be speaking to Big Sam Allardyce and getting his full-time verdict in just a moment. Stay tuned.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said stump. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Giovanni is axed following growing allegations of threatening and abusive behaviour.
We won't see his little toes dancing around the dance floor again, which is a shame.
Was it the BBC saying, you know, we've had some bad publicity about this star, do we need to maybe let him go? Or was it Giovanni himself saying that, you know, he's had to with all the bad publicity and what's the allegations against him, he's walked away? We don't exactly know. But what we do know is that Amanda Abingdon, who he was coupled with last year on the last series of Strictly, left claiming that she had nasty behaviour from him in rehearsals when they were training for their routines. And she's also been diagnosed with PTSD, which she is blaming or claiming happened because of the training that she was put under Giovanni. It's very sad because I've met Giovanni on quite a few occasions, and he comes across as a very nice gentleman, actually, and the fans absolutely love him. And even though the allegations are out there against him, everybody I speak to in terms of the fans are on his side.
I mean, from the fans' point of view, they don't see what goes on behind the scenes. All they see is an incredibly gifted dancer who we're seeing footage of now.
It might come out later, but there's all sorts of things coming out because after Amanda came out and claimed all this behaviour against him, a male celebrity last week also came out and voiced their opinion. Yeah, a lot of fans will be gutted, but as you say, we don't know the full story yet as what's gone on.
And it's incredible pressure that no one's allowed to be, a duffer right from the start now.
I mean, it's one thing learning lines if you're an actor, but it's a different kettle of fish altogether if you're learning moves that you've never done before. So you've got...
The People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. I was going to speak to Big Sam Allardyce about the football, but we can't get hold of him. Presumably he is writing his application to the FA as we speak for a second shot at the England manager. We might have him, but we don't know. So in the meantime, I'm going to bring Tom Harwood in to talk about what's coming up on State of the Nation tonight.
I thought you'd have me in as a world-renowned football expert.
Well, you have got many talents, Tom, that we're all...
I've come dressed as the England flag, actually, today, just to show my support for the Three Lions.
So is he good? Sorry, are you saying that Sam Allardyce is here? We got Sam Allardyce? Oh, I'm getting it in my ear. Sam Allardyce is here. Tom, hold that thought. Big Sam, thank God you're with us.
Thank God.
Come on, then. We haven't got very much time, Sam. Give me a complete lowdown on what you made of the match and what they need to do to beat Switzerland.
Well, obviously play better. I mean, no need to be an expert to say that. I think that they were driven right to the very, very end. We're all hanging on with our fingernails, biting our fingernails, saying this is it. We're going to exit the tournament. It's going to be a big disappointment until we had a stunning goal from Bellingham. And I think this is the difference at this level of the competition when somebody does something brilliant to change a game in your favour, and that was Bellingham. And of course the substitution of Ivan Toney, because Ivan Toney's was a massive, massive contribution to the two goals. Two really good headers, one flick on and one head back across goal for Harry Kane to score. The second got us through the tie. And of course, the big questions are asking about how the players will cope going into the next game, which at least they've got a good rest. At least they've got time to plan out how they're going to play and what they're going to try and do and how they're going to get better, really, particularly...
Sam, we're running out of time, I'm afraid. One question, yes or no answer. Does he start with Palmer and Toney next time?
Yeah, yes.
Yes, he does. Sam Allardyce, thank you very much indeed for joining me, albeit briefly. Coming up next, as I say, is State of the Nation with Tom Harwood. We won't do a handover now because he's just about to come on air and you can benefit from his football wisdom then. Before he does come on air and discuss politics, we hope, and not the soccer, let's get a weather update with Alex Burkhill, who will be telling you whether it's going to be sunny or rainy and what's going on for Election Day. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. Looking ahead to tomorrow, there will be some showery rain around, but also some bright sunny spells. But first thing, for some, it is going to be a bit cloudy and a bit damp because of a frontal system that has already pushed its way in from the northwest and is currently making its way southeastwards as we go overnight. So eastern, southern parts of England likely to have quite a bit of cloud and some drizzly rain as we go through the night and head towards dawn tomorrow. Elsewhere, some clear spells mixed in, a few few showers possible, but temperatures really aren't going to drop a huge amount, particularly in the east and southeast where we have that thicker cloud. It is going to be a pretty mild start to the day tomorrow. But like I said, a cloudy, damp, drizzly start here. Further north, a bit of a brighter start, particularly across eastern parts of Scotland. A good deal of sunshine early on here. Further west, we will see some showery rain pushing its way in, and that's going to turn a bit more persistent, a bit more widespread as we go through the day. Across Northern Ireland, much of northern England, through the morning it's looking mostly dry, some bright sunny spells. Watch out for a few showers across parts of Wales, perhaps northwest England, and then a real west-east split across much of central southern England with that cloud and that drizzly rain I mentioned across eastern parts. Most of that, though, will clear away as we go through the day, and so it is going to turn a little bit drier and brighter here. Further north, a slightly different story. Yes, there will be some sunny breaks around, but I am expecting some showery rain to push its way in across parts of Scotland, northern England and Northern Ireland, and some of this could be on the heavy side. Temperatures around average for the time of year, just about scraping into the low 20s towards the south. Wednesday looks like a pretty wet day for many of us. The rain may not be especially heavy, but it's going to be fairly widespread. Most places likely to see some wet weather at times, could even be some low clouds, some hill fog and some strong blustery winds to watch out for as well. For many, Thursday looks like it will be a brighter day, but could be quite windy for some of us before more rain on Friday. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours. It's our biggest cash prize of the year so far, and you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
You're joking. Really? Seriously, it's not a wind-up, is it?
Oh, flipping heck. Oh, dear.
Oh, my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. Like I said, I've never won anything like this. That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon. Thank you.
For a chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This election night, we're putting on a party.
And you are invited.
We'll be here with you.
Following all the twists and turns.
As well as all the live reaction from our election night watch party.
With our GB News lineup.
And as morning breaks, we'll be here with breakfast from 6 a.m.
As it becomes clear who the winners and the losers really are.
Vote 2024.
Thursday, the 4th of July.
Only on GB News.
Britain's election channel. Congratulations to the GB News winners at this year's Trick Awards.
And the winner of Interview of the Year is... Alistair Stewart reveals his heartbreaking diagnosis to Camilla Tominey.
And the winner is GB News Breakfast. And the winner is Nigel Farage.
And thank you to you, our GB News viewers and listeners, for making us the people's